You did not stumble upon this message by accident. Nothing far greater is at work, something unseen yet deeply intentional. It is the hand of God, gently guiding you to this moment, for He has something to reveal. Perhaps you have long sensed that you were different, set apart in ways you could not quite explain. Perhaps you have felt a longing, a stirring in your soul, like you were made for something more. That feeling was not a mistake. Your life has not been a series of coincidences, but a carefully woven design, leading you here, to a truth that has always been written within you. Your birth, struggles, and victories are not random, but part of a divine pattern, waiting to be understood. Now is the time, the moment has come to awaken, to see with new eyes and to step boldly into the mission for which you were created. The divine calling, a purpose unveiled. You are not here by chance. The stars above, the whispering wind, the very pulse of the earth, each has conspired to bring you to this moment. It is not a coincidence that your eyes now rest upon these words, for there are no coincidences in the workings of God. He has led you here to this very message because something extraordinary is about to unfold in your life. From the moment of your birth, you were woven into a grand design, a narrative that extends beyond the boundaries of time. The same voice that called Abraham from his homeland, that whispered to Moses from the burning bush, that stirred the heart of David in the fields. This voice has been calling you too. And now, it is time to listen. Many believe they walk the earth untethered, mere wanderers upon the shifting sands of fate. But you were never meant to drift aimlessly. Your life has a purpose, a divine purpose, written before the foundations of the world. The very day of your birth is not a random number, but a marker, a signpost pointing towards the path you were meant to follow. Consider Saul, a man who once walked in blindness, convinced of his own righteousness. But the light of God broke through his darkness and he was transformed into Paul, a beacon of truth. Or Esther, an orphan girl who might have lived in obscurity, yet was raised for such a time as this. Their lives were not happenstance, nor is yours. Perhaps you have felt the stirrings of something greater, a quiet longing, an unshakable restlessness. This is no ordinary desire. It is the whisper of your Creator, calling you to step forward. The road ahead may be uncertain, but know this: the one who calls you is faithful. He does not summon without equipping. He does not lead without providing. So ask yourself, what is stirring within you? What dream, burden, and calling has been placed upon your heart? Do not let fear silence it. Do not allow doubt to steal it away. Just as Gideon was called while hiding in fear, just as Peter was chosen despite his failings, so too are you chosen. The question is not whether you have a purpose. The question is whether you will answer the call. For the time is now. The moment has come. Stand firm, step forward, and embrace the destiny set before you. You were not meant to be lost, you were meant to be found, and now, at last, the journey begins. The awakening of Elias. Elias had always known there was something different about him. It wasn't the way he spoke or walked, nor was it in his mannerisms. It was something deeper, an ache within his soul, an unshakable yearning for something beyond the confines of his mortal existence. One evening, as the golden hues of the sunset painted the sky, Elias sat on the edge of a quiet riverbank, reflecting on his life. He had been restless, sensing that his purpose had not yet been fulfilled. The voices of the world told him to seek wealth, power, and recognition, yet his heart whispered of a different path, one that led not to the temporal but the eternal. An old man approached him as the stars began to emerge, shimmering like heavenly sentinels. His robes were tattered, but his eyes held a wisdom that could not be measured in years. "Tell me, young one, do you know why you were born?" the old man asked. Elias hesitated. "To live, I suppose. To find my place," the old man chuckled, shaking his head. "Your birth was not an accident, nor is your life a mere existence. There are gifts hidden within you. Gifts placed there by the one who called you into being." Elias furrowed his brow. "What do you mean?" The old man gestured toward the night sky. "Look up. Every star has been placed with purpose, each one shining as it was meant to. And yet, You have lived your days as though wandering in darkness. Do you not feel it? The call to something greater. Eliah's heart pounded. He had felt it. Every night, every quiet moment, every time he looked into the vastness of the sky and felt as though something or someone was watching over him. The old man smiled knowingly. Understanding your purpose is not simply knowledge, Elias. It is a transformation. When you embrace who you were meant to be, your life will align in ways you never imagined. But how do I know? Elias asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How do I know what I was made for? The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. Seek him who made you. He is not far, though you may have felt it distant. He has written his truth upon your heart. When you truly listen, you will find that the longing you have always felt was not for the things of this world, but for him. A gentle breeze stirred the river, and Elias felt something shift within him. For the first time he understood. His gifts, his strengths, even his weaknesses. They were not random. They were threads in the grand tapestry of a divine plan. His life had meaning beyond what he had seen before. In that moment, Elias bowed his head. He did not have all the answers, but he no longer needed them. He had found the one who did. And in finding him, he had found himself. As he rose from the riverbank, the old man was gone. Yet Elias knew he had not been alone. He never had been. The world had not changed, yet everything was different. He walked away, not just as Elias, but as a man awakened to his divine purpose, ready to step into the calling that had been waiting for him all along. The chosen and the call. The wind howled through the ancient valley, carrying whispers from a time long forgotten. A young man stood at the edge of a quiet village, staring into the vast sky. He had always known he was different. There had been signs, moments when the world around him seemed to pause, as if awaiting his next move. Tonight was one of those moments. He remembered the words of the old traveler who had passed through the village years ago. One day the call will come. When it does, you must listen. Those who recognize it are already chosen. He had dismissed it then. But now, as the stars pulsed above him like living things, he felt a stirring deep within his spirit. From the village square, the sound of a gathering crowd reached him. He turned and saw the people murmuring around a stranger, a man with eyes like burning coals. The stranger spoke with a voice that resonated not just in the ears, but in the soul. "Hear me," the man called, his gaze sweeping across the onlookers. "You have been invited to partake in something greater than yourselves, but only those who feel the pull, who understand the weight of these words, will endure till the end. Many will turn away, distracted by the world's fleeting noise, but the chosen will remain." The crowd shuffled uneasily. Some laughed, shaking their heads. Others whispered behind their hands, unwilling to meet the man's eyes. The young man, however, felt something shift inside him. The words rang with truth, and he knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. The stranger's voice softened. To engage with this message is to send a signal to the heavens. It is to acknowledge the call placed upon your life. Do not dismiss it. Do not let it pass you by. A few turned away, uninterested. Some stayed out of curiosity. But the young man stepped forward. "What must I do?" he asked. The stranger smiled. "Acknowledge the truth. Engage with it. Speak it. Live it. Those who do will find that the message was never just words, but a fire ignited within." The young man nodded, determination settling over him like a mantle. He would answer the call. He would not waver. And as he looked around, he saw others stepping forward as well, drawn, as he had been, by something greater than themselves. The stranger's voice rang out one final time. "You are here because you were meant to be. The journey begins now." And with that, the world around them seemed to hum with unseen energy, as though heaven itself had taken notice. The divine mission and the cosmic tapestry. Caleb had always felt that the world around him was a puzzle with missing pieces. Even as a child, he sensed there was something more, something beyond the daily routines and fleeting pleasures that occupied those around him. He would stare at the stars, their distant glow whispering of a design too grand to be accidental. But where did he fit in? What was his purpose? One evening, after years of drifting through life without answers, Caleb found himself in an ancient cathedral. The air was thick with the scent of burning candles, and the stained glass windows cast shifting light patterns onto the stone floor. He felt drawn forward, as if an unseen force had guided him to this place. Kneeling before the altar, he whispered, "Lord, why am I here?" Then it happened. A voice, neither loud nor soft, but filling every corner of his being, answered, "You were made for a purpose, woven into the fabric of my creation. Your mission is written upon your soul, waiting for you to embrace it." The words sent a shiver down his spine. He thought of Moses, a shepherd called to lead a nation; Esther, a queen born for such a time as hers; Peter, a fisherman turned foundation of the church. Had they too once felt lost? Had they questioned their place before stepping into their destiny? Caleb's heart pounded. "But what is my purpose? How do I find it?" "Seek me and you will find. Walk in faith and I will reveal the path." A warmth flooded his spirit, a certainty he had never known. It was as if the puzzle pieces of his life were suddenly rearranging into something coherent. He wasn't just a fleeting existence in the cosmos. He was part of a grand story, written by the divine author himself. He rose from his knees, his mind racing. He thought of the years he had spent searching for fulfillment in things that never satisfied. He had chased success, recognition, fleeting pleasures, and yet, standing here in the quiet of the cathedral, he realized the truth. He had been seeking something only God could give. He stepped outside, and the night sky looked different for the first time. The stars no longer seemed cold and distant, but instead a woven tapestry of light, each one positioned with purpose, just as he was. Caleb knew that he might not discover his full mission in a single moment, but that no longer troubled him. His journey had begun, and that was enough. He would walk forward in faith, trusting that the one who had created the stars had also created him with a purpose worth living for, and in that knowledge he found peace. The power of birth date and spiritual identity. The night sky stretched endlessly, a vast expanse of mystery and purpose. Each star, fixed in its place, shone with a radiance ordained by the Creator. So too, every soul was set upon this earth at its appointed time, not by chance, but by divine design. From the beginning, God wove time and destiny together. When a child is born, it is not mere circumstance, it is a decree from the heavens, a placement upon the grand tapestry of existence. Birth dates are not random numbers, they are divine codes, revealing the personal missions of those who bear them. A wise teacher once stood before his disciples, his voice steady and full of conviction. "Do you think it is by accident that you were born in this age, in this moment? No, my friends, the Lord does not cast dice with the universe. Each of you was sent forth for a purpose. Every trial, triumph, and tear you shed aligns with your divine calling." The students listened in rapt silence. The teacher continued, "There are different types among us, each bound to a unique role in God's kingdom. Some are warriors, called to defend truth against the shadows of deception. Others are healers, blessed with the power to mend broken spirits. There are prophets, whose voices echo with the wisdom of eternity, and shepherds, entrusted with the care of many souls. Knowing your spiritual identity means understanding the task set before you." One student, his brow furrowed in thought, raised a hand. "Master, how do we uncover this purpose? How do we know which path is ours?" The teacher smiled. "You must seek the one who assigned it to you. In prayer, in scripture, in the quiet whisperings of the Spirit, He will reveal it. Pay attention to your struggles, for they are not meaningless. They shape and train you for your role. A warrior must first face battle. A healer must first know pain. A prophet must first be silent and listen." The wind stirred the trees, as if nature itself bore witness to these words. The students sat in contemplation, realizing that their lives, their very existence, were not accidents, but carefully orchestrated movements in a symphony beyond their understanding. "Remember," the teacher concluded, "to seek the world's approval is to lose sight of your mission, but to trust in God's design, to embrace the identity He has given you, is the greatest victory. You are not here by chance, you were sent. Now go and walk in the power of your calling." And with that the lesson ended, but the journey of discovery had only just begun. the messenger and the mountain. Elijah knelt on the jagged rocks, the cold wind clawing at his robe. The mountain loomed before him, its shadow stretching over the valley below. He had been called here, though he did not yet understand why. The prophet must listen before he speaks. 3 days had passed since he arrived. 3 days of silence, solitude, and waiting. The hermit within him relished the quiet, the space to reflect. Yet the prophet stirred within, restless for the divine whisper. Would God speak as he had to Moses, in fire and thunder? Or would it be in the still, small voice that he had once heard? At the dawn of the 4th day, a stranger appeared. His eyes bore the weight of unseen burdens, his steps slow but sure. "You seek a word from the Lord," the man said, his voice both gentle and piercing. "Yet he has already spoken to you." Elijah frowned. "I have heard nothing." The stranger smiled. "Because you are listening for a voice that fits your expectations rather than the voice that is." Elijah pondered this. He had come as a prophet, expecting revelation, but had he been too consumed by his own image of God's voice to truly hear it? The stranger continued, "Come, I will show you the different ways the Lord speaks." They descended the mountain together, arriving at a village nestled in the valley. There a woman knelt beside a child, pressing a damp cloth to his fevered forehead. Her hands trembled with exhaustion, yet her face held unwavering peace. "The healer," the stranger whispered. "She does not call fire from the sky, yet she restores what was broken. God speaks through her touch." Further down the road, a young girl sat by a weeping widow, her own eyes filled with silent sorrow. She did not speak, only held the woman's hand as tears fell freely. "The empath," the stranger said. "She does not proclaim truth, yet she understands it deeper than words could express. God speaks through her heart." They walked on, approaching a man whose hands were rough with labor. He bore the scars of years of toil, yet his spirit remained unbroken. When others faltered, he stood firm, urging them forward. "The endurer," the stranger said. "He does not seek revelation, but his life is a testament to it. God speaks through his perseverance." At the edge of the village, they found a woman addressing a gathered crowd. Her voice carried authority, and her words stirred their hearts. She did not demand obedience, rather, she awakened something in them, a sense of purpose, a call to action. "The leader," the stranger said. "She shapes the path others walk. God speaks through her vision." As the sun set, they arrived at a humble dwelling where an old man sat surrounded by eager listeners. He spoke in parables, his words simple yet profound. He asked questions more than he gave answers, yet in doing so he led them toward truth. "The teacher," the stranger said. "He does not command, nor does he heal, but he guides, gently leading others toward understanding. God speaks through his wisdom." Elijah exhaled, the weight in his chest lifting. He had sought a message, a grand revelation, but he now saw the divine in the ordinary. The prophet within him still burned, but he realized he was not alone in carrying the voice of God. The Lord spoke through the healer's hands, the empath's heart, the endurer's strength, the leader's vision, and the teacher's wisdom. Turning to thank the stranger, Elijah found himself alone. But he was no longer waiting in silence. He had heard the voice of God in 1,000 ways, and now, at last, he understood. The voice of the Lord is not confined to thunder and flame, but speaks in the gentle touch, the steady hand, the guiding word. To listen is to see. The urgency of recognizing the divine calling. The sky was shifting from deep indigo to the first whispers of dawn. A lone traveler stood at the crossroads, his heart burdened with indecision. He had heard the call, a voice not of this world, a summons that stirred the very marrow of his bones. Yet he hesitated, trapped between the certainty of the known and the vast, uncharted wilderness of the divine path ahead. He thought of Gideon, who had asked for a sign. He thought of Jonah, who had fled. How many had delayed their calling, questioning, doubting, seeking comfort in delay? And how many had paid the price for hesitation? A gentle wind carried the whisper of Scripture. "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts." Still, the traveler wavered. "What if I am not ready? What if I fail?" The enemy's greatest weapon was not an open assault but a whisper. Wait, not yet. Maybe tomorrow. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was an old man, his robe tattered but his eyes burning with clarity. You wonder if you are ready? You ask if you will succeed? Tell me, when a king summons his servant, does the servant delay? Does he wait for certainty or does he obey? The traveler swallowed hard. But what if I am not the right one? What if I misunderstand my role? The old man smiled. Have you not heard? A lamp does not question whether it is meant to shine, it simply does. Recognizing your type, your calling, is not about knowing all the answers. It is about taking the first step. The path unfolds to those who walk. The traveler looked down the road. It stretched far beyond what his eyes could see, yet something within him stirred. The words of the old man echoed in his soul. The time to act is now. To wait is to delay destiny. He took a step forward, and the heavens seemed to rejoice. But as he journeyed, doubts crept back into his mind. The road was harder than he had imagined. The voices of the past whispered at his back, telling him to turn around, reconsider, and take the easier path. He pressed on, but the weight of uncertainty bore down upon him. He recalled the stories of old. Abraham, who left his homeland without knowing where he was going. Peter, who stepped out onto the waves, trusting that the waters would hold him. They had all faced moments of fear, yet they had pressed forward, clinging to the unseen hand of God. The wind howled through the barren landscape. The traveler pulled his cloak tighter around him. What if I am walking in the wrong direction? He murmured. Once again the old man appeared, his form barely visible through the mist. Do you believe the one who called you can also guide you? He asked. The traveler hesitated. I want to believe, but I fear making a mistake. The old man chuckled softly. You place too much trust in your ability and too little in his. Have you not read? Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. The road ahead will not always be clear, but the next step will always be lit. Walk in the light given to you now and trust that more will be revealed in time. The traveler closed his eyes. The weight on his shoulders lightened. When he opened them again, the mist had begun to clear. The path, though still long, no longer seemed insurmountable. The old man was gone, but his words remained. With renewed strength, the traveler stepped forward once more. This time he did not look back. The trials of the messenger. The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden beams upon the dusty road ahead. Elias, a young messenger of the word, walked with steady resolve, though his heart was heavy with the weight of his mission. He had been called to speak truth in a land that no longer wished to hear it, to deliver a message that would be met with scorn and laughter. But he knew deep within that the path of obedience was never promised to be easy. As he entered the city gates, the noise of the crowd surged around him like an unrelenting tide. Merchants shouted, children played, and the air was thick with the scent of spices and burning oil. Yet, as he stepped forward to speak, a hush fell upon those nearby, curiosity flickering in their eyes. He raised his voice, declaring the call to return to the ways of righteousness, to cast aside the idols of self-interest, and to heed the voice of the one who had fashioned the heavens. Laughter rang out. Who is this dreamer? Mocked a man draped in fine robes. Does he not know that we are wiser now? We have no need for old tales and warnings of judgment. Another, a woman with piercing eyes, sneered. Go back to the desert, prophet. We have found our own truth. Elias felt the sting of their words, but he did not waver. He remembered the trials of those who had gone before him. Moses before Pharaoh, Elijah before the priests of Baal, even the Lord himself rejected in his own town. He steadied himself, recalling the promise. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The opposition grew fiercer. Stones were hurled, insults sharper than daggers flew from their lips, yet Elias pressed on. He found refuge in the shadow of an alleyway, his breath unsteady but his resolve unbroken. The night fell, and in the stillness he heard the whisper in his soul. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. A hand touched his shoulder. He turned to see a young boy, no older than 10, eyes wide with wonder. Tell me more, the child whispered. Tell me about the one who made the stars. A spark of hope ignited within Elias. Perhaps the mighty had scoffed, the learned had rejected, but the innocent still longed for truth. He knelt, speaking softly of a love that never fails, of a grace that redeems even the most lost. And as he spoke, the stars above shone brighter, as if the heavens themselves bore witness. The road ahead would not be easy. Mockery, rejection, and trials would come, but Elias knew this. The mission was not in vain, for even in the face of opposition, light would always shine in the darkness, and the darkness would not overcome it. Days passed, and Elias continued his mission, moving from village to village. Some listened with quiet reverence, others turned their backs, but he pressed on. One evening, as he rested beneath an olive tree, a group of weary travelers approached him. Their leader, a man with weathered hands and kind eyes, spoke. "We have heard whispers of your words, Elias," he said. "Many say you are a fool, but others believe you may carry the truth we have long forgotten." Elias met his gaze. "The truth is not mine to carry alone. It belongs to all who seek it." The man nodded. "Then tell us. We are listening." And so Elias spoke once more. He told them of the one who called them by name, of the promises woven into the fabric of the world, of the love that never fails. One by one, their eyes softened, their hearts stirred. Some wept, others knelt in silent prayer, and in that moment, Elias knew that the struggle was worth it. For the mission was never about numbers or applause. It was about reaching the hearts that still longed for the voice of the divine. And so, as the dawn broke upon a new day, Elias rose with renewed strength, ready to walk the path set before him, no matter how steep or treacherous it might be, for he was not alone and never would be. Embracing the mission, answering the call of God, the stars stretched across the heavens like an ancient script, written long before time began. Beneath them, a young woman knelt by the river, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She had heard the whispers, soft, persistent, undeniable. A call not from men, but from something far greater. Yet doubt clung to her like a shadow. "Who am me?" she murmured, tracing the water's surface with trembling fingers. "What can I possibly offer?" A rustling in the trees signaled the arrival of an old man. His steps were slow but deliberate, his eyes kind yet piercing. "You ask the wrong question, child," he said, lowering himself onto a nearby rock. "It is not what you offer, but what he has given you." She turned to him, searching his face. "But I am not strong, not wise, not worthy. Others are far more capable." The old man chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, but tell me, did David believe he could face Goliath? Did Moses not plead with God to send another? Did Gideon not doubt, even with a heavenly messenger before him? And yet they stepped forward, not because they were strong, but because they were called." She frowned, considering his words. "But how do I know my place? How do I know what I am meant to do?" The old man reached down, picking up a small stone. "Every piece of the wall has its place. The cornerstone does not envy the gate, nor does the lamp wish to be the foundation. Each has a role given by the architect himself. Do not look to another's calling. Seek only to fulfill your own." She looked down at her hands, so small, so seemingly insignificant. "But what if I fail?" "Failure is only in refusing to begin," he said gently. "God does not require perfection, only obedience. The world is in need of those who will listen, those who will step forward, those who will embrace what has been placed before them. Do not ask, 'Why me?' Ask instead, 'Why not me?'" A breeze stirred the water, rippling outward in endless circles. The young woman exhaled, feeling the weight on her shoulders shift, not disappear, but transform into something else, something lighter. She stood, her decision made. "Then I will go." The old man smiled, the wisdom of ages in his eyes. "Then you have already succeeded." The night stretched on, the stars watching, the river singing, and the world turning, waiting for those who would embrace the mission set before them. Days passed, and the young woman prepared herself. She gathered what little she had, yet she knew it was enough. Every morning she prayed for strength, and every night she listened for guidance. The fear still lingered, but it no longer held her captive. One evening, as she walked through the village, she encountered a group of children playing near the well. They were laughing, carefree, untouched by the burdens of the world. She paused, watching them, when a little boy approached. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his wide eyes filled with curiosity. She knelt before him. "I am." "Well?" he asked, tilting his head. She hesitated before answering. "Because I have been called to something greater, because there are people who need to hear the truth." The boy frowned. "Will you come back?" She smiled. "Perhaps. But even if I don't, remember this. God calls us to something special, and one day you may hear that call too. When you do, be brave." The boy considered her words, then nodded solemnly. "I will." As she lay beneath the stars that night, she thought of the many before her who had answered their call. Abraham, who left his home for an unknown land. Esther, who risked everything to save her people. Paul, who preached despite chains and persecution. Each had embraced their mission, despite fear and uncertainty. And now, it was her turn. As the first light of dawn kissed the horizon, she rose to her feet. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but she no longer walked in fear. She walked in faith. Walk with confidence, the journey of divine trust. The wind howled through the narrow pass, sending flurries of dust spiraling into the twilight. Elijah pulled his cloak tighter around his shoulders and pressed forward, his sandals slipping on the loose stones of the mountain path. Every step felt uncertain, yet he knew he was not alone. The voice of the Lord had spoken to him, clear and unwavering, "Go, and I will show you the way." He had walked without question for days, sustained only by faith and the memory of the whisper in his heart. Yet now, with the sun sinking below the horizon and the night's chill setting in, doubt crept into his mind like a shadow. What if he had misunderstood? What if he had come this far only to be abandoned? Then, as if in answer, a golden light flickered ahead. He quickened his pace, rounding a bend to find a figure standing at the mouth of a cave. A stranger, cloaked in robes that shimmered like the dawn, met his gaze. "You hesitate," the man observed. His voice was steady, warm, and knowing. "Why do you doubt?" Elijah swallowed. "I am weary, and I do not know what lies ahead." The stranger stepped closer, his eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. Does a child hesitate when his father calls him home? Does the sparrow doubt that the wind will carry him? Elijah remained silent, his heart pounding. The man extended a hand, and in his palm lay a small stone, smooth and bright like polished amber. "You fear because you look for certainty in the path rather than in the one who leads you. Take this. It is a token of his promise." Elijah hesitated before grasping the stone. The moment his fingers closed around it, warmth spread through his limbs, and the weight of his doubt lifted like mist before the morning sun. "Walk confidently," the stranger said, his voice with a quiet authority. "For he who called you is faithful and will not lead you astray." As Elijah looked again, the stranger vanished into the gathering darkness. Yet the light in his heart remained, burning with certainty. The path was no clearer than before, but it no longer mattered. He was not alone. He never had been. He turned and pressed on, each step a testament of faith, each breath an offering of trust. And as he walked, the stars above blazed like sentinels in the heavens, a silent reminder that the one who created them was guiding his every step. And now, having come to the end of this message, you stand at the threshold of something greater. This is not the end, but the beginning. A moment when knowledge must become action, when calling must be embraced. The path ahead will not always be smooth, nor will the world always recognize the weight of your purpose, but that has never mattered. The one who called you did not call you to an easy road, he called you to a true one. Whatever your role, the prophet, the healer, the leader, or the visionary, you were not made by accident, nor placed here without reason. The same God who set the stars in their courses has woven your purpose into the very fabric of time. Step forward with confidence. The world has waited long enough for you to rise. Now is the time. Walk boldly, for he who called you walks beside you still.